Okay, what I'm going to show you guys how to do is how to create a puzzle cube. So this is after I've done a lot of my design work. So what I'm going to do is I have my first sketch of my puzzle piece. I need to start with a new sheet or a new standard IPT. So I'm going to open up my sheets. I'm going to go ahead and click sketch. And for this, I'm just going to use a front plane. Now when I start drawing my puzzle cube, I'm just going to start from my origin. Now each square on my grid pattern is 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to start out 0.25. It's important that when we start doing this, we start from that origin point because it's going to help constrain it. Now in my sketch, I actually went through and I did some half squares. So that's where I'm getting that extra 1/8 of an inch. But notice as you go through, we want to get our position set. So I'm kind of pulling it, and if you see the icons that are showing up, you have kind of that little two lines. That's the parallel constraint. So that's locking them parallel. Just like this one, you see kind of a line running into another one and making kind of an upside down T. That is called the perpendicular constraint. So you don't have to do 90-degree increments if you have those perpendicular constraints in there. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you have it in parentheses, that means it's not really necessary because you already have that constraint in there. So as I keep kind of going across, I want to go ahead, continue to place my dimensions. Now, as I place these dimensions in here, one of the things is maybe I accidentally type in 0.3 instead of 0.25. So if I need to make a correction to that, I can simply hit escape to cancel my command. I can come over here, select my line, and hit the delete key and get rid of it. I'll start my line command back up. I'll snap to my endpoint, and then I can simply go through and type those dimensions. Now this is one way you could go about doing this. If you don't like putting your dimensions in all at the same time, you can actually draw a rough shape of it and then go back and add your dimensions there. Now what you'll see here is I've done the opposite. I have the right dimension, but it's not at that perpendicular angle. So I could delete it, I could redraw it, or up here, these are those constraints that we saw before. We saw parallel and perpendicular. I can simply grab the perpendicular and say make these two lines perpendicular, and it will shift it to that effect. It's a lot easier if you just get them to kind of pop up as you go. But if you do make a mistake, it is easy to correct it. And that's the nice thing about this program, is it's very easy to make modifications and changes as we go through this. 375. So you'll start to see my object take shape, and the outside edges are always going to be 1/4 of an inch, and that's the part that sticks out. That's where it's going to interlock with the other part. And the reason that it's 1/4 of an inch is simply because that's the thickness of the material that we're using. So the styrofoam that we're going to be cutting and making these out of are 1/4 of an inch. So as I go through and get this finished up, after we get it finalized or finished, I'm going to go through and extrude the object. So after we have it fully enclosed, we can finish. So if we click finish sketch, now we have my object. The other thing you can notice too is when you're in here, at the bottom, if I dimensioned everything, it should say fully constrained in the bottom right corner. And that's how you know that it's completely locked in place. So next thing we want to do is come up here and do extrude. So it'll automatically grab the profile because it's the only one on the screen. And I'm going to simply extrude it to that 1/4 inch thickness of our material. So we'll click OK. The other thing I'm going to do with this, just because it's simply easier to understand or to see when we kind of build our 3D model on the screen, is I'm going to add color to these. So for this one, they don't have to be colorized, and in the end, they won't necessarily be. But we're just going to simply go down to our color set paddle here and select a color. So if I want it to be gold, whatever, make it so it's easy to see on the screen. Then we're simply going to go Save As, navigate to wherever you put your folders. So I'm going to go to Puzzle Cube, and this is the default name here is part, and don't ever name it as part something, part 1, part 2. That's a bad habit to get into because those are default names. So if you accidentally open one and you click save, it could save over top of your work. So always try and give it a very unique name, different than that. So in this one, you can call it piece 1, you can call it piece 2, whatever. You'll see I already have mine saved, so I'm not going to save this one. And then I just simply called it piece 1, and then I'll specify what color it is, so that way I know, well, piece 1 is this. And then on my final design process, I labeled which one piece 1 is, and then you'll click save.